I love that the students are showing Matt some love. Hi to the two people who said hi to me. Okay. I'm gonna like you guys today. This is gonna be fun. I'm gonna give you guys a lot of love today. Good morning. Good morning. I always look forward to summer. I'm kind of sad that it's ending, but I look forward to summer because it's warmer weather, sunshine, taking the boat out on the lake, going for walks in the park, and getting the opportunity to craft my landscaping in my yard into my own little custom project. I love being able to shape and mold the yard into just what I want it to be. And now I live in a rental, so it makes it a little bit more challenging, but I've been granted creative liberties because my landlords are my in-laws. So as best I do as best as I can with what I'm working with. Are there any other yard people in the room? People who love to work on their yard? Okay, so I've heard it said, if this will turn my page, it won't turn my page, that's fine. I've heard it said that by the time you reach your 30s, you will fall into one of three categories as a man: barbecue, cars, and yard lines. So this is where we get a little audience participation. Men in the room, because I'm a man, I'm going to speak to you guys for a second. Any barbecue people in the room? Anybody who loves barbecuing? All right. Any car people? Classic car people? Anybody? Or just like regular cars, you love to work on them? How about yard line people? Like you're obsessed with how your yard ends up looking. Someone's pointing. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you a stereotype, and I am not ashamed to admit it. There's just something satisfying about completing a project, any project. You get done, and you get to stand back, and you really get to take it all in. You see the results of your hard work and effort right before your eyes. It's truly a great thing. But my process goes like this. I start to mow my yard, so I move the gutters and everything out of the way, and then I mow down. But if the grass is too high, and I know it's going to spit out a lot of extra grass, I mow backwards. And then I mow forwards, and then backwards, because I hate clumps of grass in my yard when I'm done mowing, so much so I will get a rake out, and I will put the extra effort in to clean all of that up. Then I get my weed whacker or weed eater, depending on whatever you want to call it, and I trim the sidewalks. I trim the edging around my house. I'm so picky, and it drives my wife nuts. I will go out in the street, and I will trim the weeds in the street in front of my house. And then I get the blower out, and I blow off all the sidewalks and everything, and then I put the gutters back in place. Then, guys, I do the most important job of mowing your yard. No, that has happened. I will walk around the yard one last time just to make sure everything is perfect. See, it's a process, and it goes great until it doesn't. See, my weed eater runs on a battery. When I first got my weed eater, this battery could do everything around my yard. I could take it to the neighbor's yard. I could bring it to your yard, and it would still work. But now I can fully charge this bad boy, and halfway through my sidewalks, I'm like, meow. I take my hand off the button, hand off the trigger, and go all over again. It gets about here to here before it dies. Less than like one pad of sidewalk. It only gets me so far. Now, a job that would usually take about 15 minutes can take about 30 minutes or longer. Why? One, because I'm cheap. It's the end of summer, and I'm not buying a new battery yet. But it's because this battery's become depleted. The energy it once could sustain over long periods of time has waned. It can no longer support the workload and demands that I'm placing on it. It has to go back to the recharging station sooner and stay on it longer each time I use it. It has become so depleted that I can no longer rely on it to function correctly. So is this what you see when you look in the mirror? And wonder why you can't operate at the same speed anymore? Why you can't go through a day without a sense of panic and anxiety or overwhelm? When you think that everything rises and falls and whether or not you can get out of bed? Have you become so depleted that you're struggling to recharge? Or that it's taking you longer to recover? Or that typical day off or time away just is no longer cutting it? See, I get it. The pace of this world is crazy. From the time we're in school all the way up until retirement or several years beyond if you're super ambitious, we're plagued with the idea and notion of more. Wanting and desiring something better or to improve your skills or your life situation, that's not a bad thing. But when it becomes the main focus of your life, at the detriment of your faith, your health, your normal functionality, it might be time to take a step back. Because, church, we're made for so much more than the constant speed of 99 miles per hour with no chance of slowing down. Because when you pack your day so full that you don't have time for God, for prayer, to sit at the table with your family for a meal, to talk to your spouse, to breathe, we're not designed to go, go, go. We are not, for those old enough to remember, the Energizer Bunny. For those young enough to maybe have not remembered, you're my favorite section, so I'm going to come over here for a second. The Energizer Bunny was this little pink fluffy thing, the big old bass drum and big old battery. It was like go, 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 boom, boom, boom. Like, he went all the way to the moon because Energizer was trying to tell the competition, ours is better. Ours can do it. Ours can withstand everything else. But here's the deal. We're not the Energizer Bunny. We know it. We can feel it, but often we're too afraid to admit it. You know who wasn't afraid to admit that he needs to rest? Jesus. And we're going to dive into 2 verses of Scripture today. We're going to intentionally look at what Jesus said and what Jesus did. Now, he said a lot and he did a lot, but for today's purpose, we're going to look at just these 2. Now, they're outlined in your bulletin. They're on the RCC app, and they'll also be on the screen behind me. So the first passage is Matthew 11:28, where he says this famous phrase, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." So this is where we're going to begin today. Jesus says, "Come to me, and I will give you rest." And at this moment, when we hear these words, we're met with a choice, as with all of life. We have to choose to come to Jesus for our rest. Everything we do is based on decisions. Every action we take, every thought we have, every word we speak finds its genesis in a decision. The same is true when we choose whether or not we will trust and follow Jesus. It's a decision, one that has the potential to radically change the trajectory of your life, but it's up to you. Now, that might sting a little bit because everything we do and how we respond to things that happen to us, it's up to us. It's our decision. We have to own what we choose to do or not to do. But isn't it so much nicer to blame someone else when something goes wrong? We blame the weatherman when the weather's not sunny. What I'm saying is, feeling depleted didn't just happen to you. You actually have a choice. Because you control your calendar, it doesn't control you. Those things didn't just happen to be on your to-do list. So we have to decide, and then we have to own that decision. So our first challenge today, our first choice is, will you rest? Or will you scroll Instagram until you're in a daze and you find it hard to sleep? Guilty. Will you slow down, or will you keep pushing yourself until you're too exhausted to give up and get out of your chair? Guilty. Will you be still and enjoy the presence of God, or will you watch and listen to the constant 24/7 news cycle that breeds fear and makes you coming back for more and more and more? Will you relax and allow your thoughts to dwell on God and what you've learned throughout the day, or, for the 5th night in a row, will you binge Netflix? Now, are these things bad in and of themselves? No. But allowing these things to cloud out your health, your family, your overall satisfaction with life, your foundational faith in Jesus, that's definitely something to cause alarm. And Jesus, who is a member of the Trinity and is God, understands that we need rest. He created us. He was there in the beginning when God rested. Now, Bible scholars, I want to ask you all a question. How many days, for those of you who know, did God create the world? 6. And what did God do on the 7th? Rested. Guys, you guys are great. So good. He was with the Father when he created the world and when he created mankind in their image. Jesus was present when the very idea of us came into existence. He was there when God, the Creator, took a day off. And if the all-knowing, all-powerful, ever-present God of creation can take a day off, why can't we? Why can't I? I can venture a guess. You won't take those vacation days because you want that big payout at the end of the year if your job does that. You constantly say yes to others because you don't want to hurt their feelings. You work longer hours because you want to provide for your family and because this is your dream job and you've worked so hard to get there. Maybe you don't talk to your neighbors about Jesus. One of our main goals as a follower is to share the love of Christ because you're afraid of what they're going to think of you. Guys, we're weird. We just got to own it. When you ask someone how their day is, what is one of the first responses you typically get? When you go like, hey, how are things going? What's new? Typically when I ask someone that question, I get busy. Man, I'm so busy. I got so many things. School's starting back up. My kids are in this. I'm doing that. I've got 18 different extracurriculars that I'm working on. I'm so busy. And by saying some of this, I may have offended you, punched you in the gut, but I'm not here preaching to the walls or to the choir. I'm preaching to myself as well because throughout my life, I've had 2 full-blown panic attacks that have knocked me flat on my back. One in high school, one since working at this job. So bad that I could not function. I could not use my hands. I could barely breathe. Did not know what was going on. I was blacking out. I'm constantly anxious every single day, constantly dizzy every single day. And I constantly have an overwhelming need to control things. But the root of all that is that I don't feel like I'm enough. But how that plays itself out in my outward appearance, I'm trying to prove my worth. Because when I focus on not being enough or having worth, I push myself harder and farther than I should. When I focus on trying to prove my worth, I lose focus of the important things. I lose sight of the charging station that I'm meant to constantly come back to. That's my source of power, my source of strength, my source of renewal. I forget to show the love of Jesus to others because I'm so focused on accomplishing my amazing and awesome goals. Because I think I'm amazing and awesome when I'm not focusing on the right things. See, I rush, I try to accomplish too many tasks, I take on more than I should, but in reality, beyond all of that, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm not fully rested. Instead, I work longer hours. I start more projects than I should. I think about work when I'm not at work. I stop sleeping well. I stop exercising. I start eating junk food to cope and relax me. I stop doing the real things that rejuvenate me. I start focusing too much on outward appearance and how I'm coming off to others. Whew. I stop things like prayer. I stop things like actually reading the Bible. I put exercising on the back burner. I stop taking time to cook healthy meals. I stopped spending meaningful time with my wife. We might be in the same room, but our faces are in our phones. And I stopped taking moments to actually look up from my phone, to be present with those around me. When I think I don't need rest, when I think I don't need to come back to my charging station, when I think I can handle it all on my own, that's when disaster strikes. See, my real worth comes from spending time in the only true rest, and that is found in a relationship with Jesus Christ, because my worth, your worth, is found in how God sees you and sees me. It's not in what I do or what you do. This past May, I had the great and amazing privilege of taking a 7-week sabbatical. This is something, the huge blessing that the elders of this church have decided that it's so vital for the full-time members who have served 7 consecutive years to take time off. They tell us, go away. I'm super grateful for the opportunity, but by the time my sabbatical started, I was cooked. I was burnt out. See, the 5 months leading up to my sabbatical, I started January. I knew I was like, all right, I got to get this train rolling. I got to be prepared because May 15th, 7 weeks begins. It was brutal, because I had to find at least 16 different people to cover all of the different things that I do over a 7-week period. On top of that, in organizing their schedules, meeting some of them for the first time because they came from another church, I had to plan 2 different services, work with 2 different teams every single Sunday, do all of my media stuff, all of the normal job things that I do, on top of planning Easter and Good Friday service and other special services. I had done so much to prep for my time of getting away and being rejuvenated and getting healthy that I literally had done what I knew I shouldn't do. I overworked myself. I pushed myself. I planned. I prepped. I prepared. And I plummeted. Now, I didn't blow my life up like you see in the news with some of other pastors lately. I didn't gain any new addictions. I didn't do anything dumb. I just didn't do the things that would actually help me get rest. I had started running and moving too fast. But if you live with panic attacks and anxiety for too long and you're conscious about it, you start to see the warning signs. So I began seeing the warning signs. So I started to try and steer the ship away from the waves. I began to come back to Jesus after I had chose to forget him. I chose to hustle. I chose to sprint towards the finish line. I chose to neglect the important things. It's ironic because I'm one of your pastors. I'm supposed to be the guy that knows better, that shows you how to do better. But that's the thing. We have that saying, knowledge is power. If you know something, you have amazing power. But I've been listening to a podcast, and I've read his book. He's a thought leader. He's a thinker, and he's a brain coach. He actually studies brain activity. He says knowledge is not power. It is potential power. I'm like, well, that's simple, but yet crazy profound, because it's what we choose to do with what we know that actually matters. I mean, I could know exercising might give me abs one day, but I got to actually do sit-ups. So I know that this verse says that, Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I know it. I've read that Bible verse a million times. I've heard sermons on it countless times. But it's in the action of actually doing it that it becomes a reality. It's in the intentional movement towards Jesus that rest can begin. It's not in the knowing. It's in the act that real change begins. And once we act, that is when we begin to do number 2, restrict. Restrict things that actually keep us from moving towards Jesus so that we can do what he says. And when I say the word restrict, what's your gut reaction? Ugh, it's icky. That word's icky. No one likes to be restricted. Doesn't it make your skin crawl? I mean, who loves when someone tells you no? Or wait? What's one of the first words we learn as children? Other than mama and dada? No! Yes, we are defiant little creatures, aren't we? We say no. But the thing is, when a parent tells the toddler or a child, don't touch the hot stovetop, they're not doing it because they want to be mean and restrict you from your freedoms and your liberties. No, they're restricting you because they know it's going to hurt. They know it's going to cause you pain. Or like when a doctor says, maybe you should radically change your lifestyle and how you eat and what you're doing because it could lead to a disease or a heart attack. They're not doing it because they want to show you, look how many plaques I have on the wall. Look how smart and amazing I am. No, they're doing it because they know there is a better way for you. When Jesus tells you to rest, he isn't punishing you and telling you that you can't handle something. He's simply saying, maybe it's time for something different. Maybe it's time to prioritize something else in your life. Now, can you still be wildly successful in your marriage, in your career that you fought so hard for, in your grades or your athletics or your extracurriculars? Can you still be amazing at your hobbies? Absolutely. And I'm not downplaying that at all. But here's the hard truth. If we aren't constantly coming back to Jesus, our recharging station, then we aren't going to be able to accomplish our real goal, our real mission in any of these areas. And what is that goal? What is that mission in all of those areas? It's this: telling and showing others about the love of Jesus. But we have to put certain restrictions in place regarding our time and our focus. Now, restrictions aren't a bad thing, and Jesus knew it. In fact, Jesus didn't just say words. He lived out the very words he spoke. And in Luke 5:16, our second verse for today, it says that Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. He often withdrew to lonely places. He went somewhere with no distractions, no crowds, no followers, No disciples. And he prayed. He went back to the source of his power, authority, and strength. He took his human frailty, his human weakness, his human desires, and he placed them before the Father in prayer because Jesus was 100% God and 100% man. So he 100% knew that this side of him could not sustain things, could not get him to the finish line. So he had to take care of that side of himself. He understood the temptations of this world and the cravings of more, but he also understood that if he was going to accomplish his mission of proclaiming the truth, of going to the cross and ultimately saving the entire human race, if we come to him, he needed to put restrictions in place. He needed to put up boundaries. So that begs the question, what is a boundary? Dr. Henry Cloud, amazing person, would describe boundaries as establishing guidelines for self-care that include saying no more often and standing firm in our decisions rather than letting people walk all over you. So saying no, standing firm. Jesus did this. He often, catch that word, often went away. The demands for his time were huge. I mean, people wanted him to do miracles, to heal the sick, to do all these fantastic things. They even wanted to touch him because they thought power would flow through him. He was the most in-demand celebrity and influencer of the day, but instead of trying to gain more status and wow people, he retreated. He withdrew. He often went away from the crowds. He took time off. He set up boundaries for his time. He made the main thing. And what was that for Jesus? To proclaim love, truth, to love people, to ultimately save the world. He knew that if he was going to accomplish this task, he needed to take time away from his office or his hobbies, his things, whatever it is for you. His office and his duties, they weren't the enemy. Those things aren't bad. They were part of his mission, but he had to be healthy, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to fully accomplish his task. Even Jesus knew the importance of coming back to a recharging station. So what do you need to do to set up boundaries to protect yourself? Now, some practical ways we could do this is setting up and maintaining regular office hours and actually sticking to them. We can put our phone down or put it away when we're with friends and family. We can decide what topics we will and will not discuss with others because we want to have good time when we're visiting people. We can decide who to trust and who we will allow into our inner circle. Maybe we need to decide what non-negotiables are for a job in the future. Or we decide that we will actually take all of our allotted vacation time, even if that could be a staycation. It's funny, my wife had sent me a video on Instagram, and I saw it this morning. It's not part of the message, but I'm going to put it part of the message because it was funny. It was a video, and the person said, I need a vacation. I need a vacation, a staycation, or some medication. They needed something different than what they were doing because what they were doing wasn't working. So however you decide to restrict things in your life, it's up to you. I've offered a few suggestions, but ultimately only you can make that decision for yourself. And it is a decision. You have power over your life, over your intentional time with Jesus, and over your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, but you have to make that decision. See, you have the power to take control of your calendar and schedule in the rest however that looks for you. No one can make it for you. Kind of like Smokey the Bear back in the day. Y'all know Smokey the Bear? You still talk about Smokey the Bear? School's doing you right. So Smokey the Bear says, only you can prevent forest fires. But for all of us, it's only you can prevent burnout and blowing your life up. It's true. It's all on us. But here's the deal. Start small. Start manageable. James Clear is an author and a speaker. He wrote a book called Atomic Habits about ways to find your habits and make them more attainable. He just spoke at a leadership conference I was at, and he was sharing a story about one guy who wanted to do something different. He wanted to change what he was working on. He knew that he wanted to lose weight and get healthy again, but he also knew himself. He knew that if he said, I want to work out, he probably would convince himself that he's not going to work out. So instead, he did a mind shift, and he said, I'm someone who shows up. So this guy had a plan. He would get up, he'd get his workout clothes on, he'd get in his car, he'd drive to the gym, he'd set a 5-minute timer, work out for 5 minutes, the timer goes off, he would leave. Every single day, only 5 minutes. I mean, people probably looked at him like he was nuts. Every day, get up, get dressed, drive to the gym, set a timer, 5-minute timer goes off, he's out of there. He knew he had to change his mindset about things. He wanted to be a person who shows up, and that led to him saying, oh, I'm here for 5 minutes, I'll stay a little longer. Stayed a little bit longer, and over time, a couple years, he lost over 100 pounds. Starting small, changing his mindset, changing the way that he was going to view things. He put restrictions in place. So how do we do this? So if we want to rest, or if we feel like we're resting, and we want to restrict things, or we have put restrictions in place, but we want to take it a little further, how do we do all this? We restructure our approach to things. Remember how I told you that I was cooked? I was burnt out. I was spent right before I went on my sabbatical. I knew it. I could feel it. I knew that I had to do something while I was away. So my plan was simple. I knew my wife, Emily, and I had rebooked a trip from 2020. You know that one year that's like a blip on the radar? Like, did that happen? So we rebooked a trip we were going to do. And we were only going to activate one phone to save money and also to be intentional that like no one could reach me. They could reach her, not me. And the church and I, we kind of had one rule. We would cut off all work-related communication. If they wanted to talk to me about my yard lines, let's do it. They want to talk to me about anything going on here? Wrong-o. So the boundaries and restrictions were in place, but I, knowing me, had to restructure certain things. So the minute we left, I put my phone on airplane mode. I deleted work emails. I decided I would limit my time to almost no social media. I would intentionally spend time doing nothing, which is very hard for me. I would read only fiction books, no leadership books, no worship books, no nothing. And I would try not to think about work. I would be intentional with my time with Emily, and I'd work on my yard when I got back home. That was my plan. Cut a lot of things out, keep other things simple, and slow down. If you know me at all, you're probably laughing by now because I do not slow down. My default speed is 99 miles per hour, and I actually had one staff member here tell me that I take 2 to 3 steps to their 1 anytime we're walking. But I know I had to restructure my life in order to get back to things. I knew I had to change something in order to focus on Jesus. I needed to rest first and foremost. I simply needed time off, and perhaps you do too. That's the best place to begin. Rest. I even took creative rest. I didn't play any music. I only sang when I went to a church that spoke English. I did no writing. I took time off. I rested. And perhaps that's where you need to begin. Just come to Jesus. Decide here and now, it's your decision, that you need something different. And since returning from sabbatical, I've stuck to leaving the office on time. And if I leave late, I flex the next day, so I either come in late or I stay a little, I flex it. And I'm making an effort to be more present with Emily when I'm with her. I'm being more aware of what I'm saying yes to. So for the last 8 or 9 years, I've had this saying, and I don't remember where I got it, but I say no to good things so I can say yes to great things. Because if I fill my calendar up with a bunch of good things and a great thing comes along, I'm like, I don't got any time to do that great thing. So I try to structure my calendar by saying no to a lot of things, which I had to learn the hard way. It's probably one of my panic attacks because I like to commit and say yes to things. See, my wife, she can do like one thing a week. She's like, that's all the emotional capacity I have is one, and that's it. I'm like, I can do 7, 8, 9. Let's just stack this calendar up. And she's like, you're crazy. And she's right. Wives, they're really smart. I don't know why we don't listen to them. But I have to continually set and stick to boundaries around my time. So perhaps you're ready to restrict some things. If you feel too busy, it's time to restrict. If you struggle with boundaries and saying no, maybe it's time to restrict. And there are some things, I have permanent restrictions. Like I've got permanent restrictions on my phone. So much so that I can't look at the adult ministries page of the Rochester Christian Church website. Because I've known from past addictions that there are certain freedoms I can't handle. So there are restrictions in place to make sure that I can have a better, stronger, and deeper relationship with Jesus and those around me. Or maybe today you're in the restructuring phase of things. Deep down, you know you have time, but you still don't feel rested. Maybe it's that you aren't using your time well. Maybe it's time to restructure. See, the point of rest is to refuel you for your purpose. See, like this battery, needs to be recharged over and over again to fulfill its purpose of trimming my yard, perhaps you need to recharge to fulfill your God-given mission of loving others and yourself. You see, we're made for so much more than this. And for the keen-eared individuals in the room, I did just quote the band Switchfoot. If you don't know Switchfoot, look them up. But the idea of we were made for so much more than this, they were right. Because we were made to reflect the words and life of Jesus as Christians. Everything we think, say, and do should be reflecting the life of Jesus. Anything else is striving after things that, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, don't matter too much. So don't sacrifice your relationship with Jesus, your family, and your loved ones in the pursuit of more, whatever more might be for you. Because you were made for so much more than more. So much more. So like this battery has to constantly go back to the source to be recharged, may you constantly come back to Jesus. May you find rest in Him. Allow Him to help you restrict what is holding you back and restructure your daily habits so you can flourish instead of flounder. And remember what flourishing looks like. It looks like Jesus, caring for those around you, sharing the truth, taking time to come back to God. But have you taken that time? So here's the question and challenge for you, and really think about this for a second. One small thing, what one small thing can you do today that can help you lead a more restful and less chaotic life? One thing, whether it's starting or stopping, and keep it small so you can actually sustain it, so you can actually do it. And create a new habit, a healthy habit. What one thing can you do? And if you're here and you don't know Jesus, you haven't said, Jesus, I accept you as my Lord and Savior, maybe that's your one thing today. And that's going to be the most important one thing you ever do. The most important one thing decision you have ever had is to say, Jesus, I trust you. I want to be like you. I want this rest that you have. Because the rest of that first verse where Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest, he talks about the fact that he's going to help you carry the load. He's going to help you. So if you're here and you don't know Jesus, there's no reason to wait. The only thing holding you back is you. And your excuse might be you're not ready. That's fine. That's your choice. But don't give up. If you're here and you've been burned by stupid Christians in the past, I'm sorry. That's their fault. But that's not who Jesus is. So don't let your frustrations, don't let anything hold you back from coming to Jesus. Because it is the best decision you'll make. So church, here it is. What one thing can you do? What one thing can you do to live a more restful life? To be more like Jesus? Let's pray. Father, we thank you that we get the opportunity to be more like you. That we get an opportunity to come to you because you will offer rest. You will help us put restrictions in place to restructure our lives so that they can be better. Because with you, we are the best version of ourselves. Only with you can we find freedom, can we find true rest. So Lord, help us identify the one thing that might be holding us back, the one thing that's keeping us from being like you, the being in your presence, the one thing that's making us more loving, more caring, more like you. Jesus, we love you. We thank you. We are so grateful for what you have done for us on the cross and the fact that we can gather in this place. It's in your holy and gracious name. And all God's people agreed and said,